One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, because in my work, I get a lot of women, but increasingly I'm getting lots of men coming to me, both for readings, healings, and also coaching. It's quite traditional to have men come for coaching, but men are very reluctant to open up, come for counseling, have readings, have healings. But more and more men are coming. And I'm very lucky in that my practice is almost equal men to women, but the majority are still more women. And historically, I had way more women. So I would have 10 women, maybe one man. That is changing. And more men are aware of the issues that they're facing. One of the most important books that I think I've read recently is this book called The Boy Crisis. And I'm particularly interested in male psychology, in male thinking. I did do some training in psychotherapy, and I have a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. And in my studies, both the psychotherapy and psychology, we were made aware, and I did a lot of research on how men interact with therapy and how women interact with therapy and or coaching. And it's very interesting the differences between the two. But when I was reading this book, I came to thinking, women now, I feel, are in some ways the most oppressed, if I can use that word. The amount of women who are working careers and yet are having to be carers to young children and to elderly relatives. The statistics show that women vastly do most of the housework and do most of the care work. Why is it that now women are objectified more? A lot of people say it's to do with the social medias, with the pornography that is available everywhere, where women are now objectified. There are more and more women suffering sexual assault, sexual rape, and also the conviction rates for these crimes are going lower. I mean, drinks are getting spiked. Women are going out, and they get this injection thing when they're passing out or whatever. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much trauma women are experiencing just because they're female. And this is happening in England, in America, in developed countries. It's just shocking that women cannot go out for a drink and they're at danger of their drink being spiked. So I know women who go out in twos, so one can keep an eye on the drink. That is ridiculous. How is it that we've come to this? But then, with my male coaching, psychotherapy, healing, psychic reader hat on, when I was reading this, I was shocked. In this book, on chapter 5, it begins with saying that more men in the UK have died by suicide in the past year when this book was published than all British soldiers fighting in wars since 1945. There's another statistic on page 35 of this book that says that suicide, male suicide, now takes more lives than war, murder, and natural disasters combined, stealing more than 36 million years of healthy life around the world. Do you know that in the East, men in India are 9 times more likely to commit suicide than female? What is happening to the men? What is going on for men? There's a very interesting story in this book. Again, it's on page 2 of this book, so it's right at the beginning. And there's a man called Kevin, whose father says that when Kevin was 30, he had to move back home. And he felt, William, the father, felt, this is proof I failed as a father. He never told Kevin, his son, this, but it still haunts him. Kevin felt his father's shame, even though his father, William, hadn't verbalized it. So for Kevin, there was this energy, and there's a lot of Western men that I come across whose sons, daughters come to live with them again. But mainly sons, they feel a lot of shame and guilt that they couldn't help their children, empower the children to leave home, spread their wings, and go on and make their own nest and be successful in life. A lot of these men feel failures, that they don't earn enough, that they can't be independent enough. And somehow it talks to them about their masculinity as male providers. Being a provider is very much a strong part of the male psyche. Now, I was thinking about this coming from an Indian heritage, having been born in Africa, lived in the UK and some parts in California. It's interesting to me because if as an Indian, my son lives with me and he's 30 years old, as Kevin is in this book, I would see that as a great thing. He's being a good Indian boy. He's coming home, he's coming to live with me. So he's saving his money. He's able to go on exotic holidays that he wouldn't be able to afford if he's on his own. He's able to save money so that eventually when he buys a house, he can get a much better house. He's driving very nice cars, which he wouldn't be able to do if he was living on his own. So as an Indian father, I would feel really proud that he's part of his heritage. He's living at home and availing himself of all the resources that, since joint families have existed, that younger generations benefit from. So East and West is different. West is feeling shame, and there's pride in the same circumstance in the East. But then why is it that both men in the West and men in the East India are committing suicide so much? If women are having all these problems, why then are these women's husbands, fathers, brothers, sons, nephews, friends killing themselves in these mass numbers? There is something going on that I think this book and other books touch on that is happening for men. Now, many women have argued to me that it's because for the first time women are empowered. And it is true. Since time began, since I can imagine and think about, and I love history, women have always been oppressed. That is true. But in the 1920s, after World War, there is evidence, there are studies that is the first time men were challenged with their primary role. And women came out the house, they began to work, they began to be economically powerful. So this isn't the first time that men have had a challenge to their masculinity and what masculinity is, what it means to be a father, what it means to be a husband, what it means to be a son, and etc. But now again, we're experiencing this in the 2020s. So 1920, 2020, I would suggest a similar change for masculine roles and masculinity. Why is it that those men managed in the 1920s and that we in the 2020s are having this big crisis? What is happening economically, socially, politically, spiritually, ethically, morally? What is happening that women are suffering, but men too? There is something that needs to change. And I hope that in my work, I'm able to empower men and women so that they can live their lives fully, holistically, and that they can live their lives without shame and guilt. These are very powerful emotions. We collectively, men, women, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, we all need to come together and support each other. I do not know one man who doesn't believe that women should be treated equally as men. Men should be earning the same as women. Women should be earning the same as men if they're doing the same job. And of course, women can do the same job as men and men the same as women. Of course, women are weaker physically than men in general, but that's not the point. There is equality. There should be this energy that we all experience where women are not disadvantaged and men aren't disadvantaged for whatever reason. What is happening to our societies, East and West? Though there's different reasons why men are committing suicide, in the East, and the culture is different for men and women. Patriarchy exists really heavily in the East. In the West, what is happening to men and women? Why are we having these? And I think it's important that people such as myself are able to help. And it's also true, and there's lots of studies that prove that psychotherapy, schools, these environments are becoming increasingly feminized for boys, for men. So I'm very mindful of that in my work, so that I change my environment, the way I work with men, to women. But we need to be very mindful, very thoughtful, very respectful of each other. Words are important, how we speak to each other, bringing each other back to oneness, that we're all members of this incredible human race. We have an incredible capacity for tolerance and love. We need to come back more to that instead of being polarized as we have been in more recent years.